Health statistics have dictated our lives for 16 months, but in the current context of high cases, low deaths and rolled back restrictions, how are we feeling and behaving? How are businesses faring? And can we point to any lasting changes? So firstly, let's look at consumer behaviour. Now, this shows the number of daily flights across the year. So 2019 at the top, 2020 in red, and 2021, that yellow line you can see there. Now, last week, the number of flights rose to their highest levels since before lockdown 1. Evidence, perhaps, of travel rules relaxing and confidence building. But we're still a long way off those 2019 levels. So what about in an area of life where there are no longer any restrictions at all? Now, this shows retail footfall going back across the entire pandemic. You can see it has recovered to a degree, but it was still 70%, 77% lower this week than it was in the same week in 2019. It's hard to tell how much of that is caution and how much of it is habits having permanently changed. So what about the world of business? We've heard a lot, haven't we, about the strains of the pingdemic, but there are some other more structural changes going on as well. One of them is a big lack of staff. Now, this shows the number of job vacancies going back 2 decades. You can see how they slumped when the pandemic hit, but they've recovered. They're now higher than they were pre-pandemic. In fact, they're higher than they've been at any point in the last 20 years. It's really quite surprising, given that the economy is recovering from this huge shock. Things are particularly bad in sectors like transport and logistics. This shows the number of online job adverts this year compared with the last 2 years. And look, those adverts are up over 300% on what they were in February 2020. So why? Well, there's likely a number of things going on, but one of them is certainly this. The latest numbers show that in early July, somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million people were still on furlough. That's a huge number, given that the economy is now officially reopened and the scheme's starting to taper off. And it's not clear yet what happens to those people once that scheme ends. And amongst all of this, we have to ask how people are feeling about these ongoing rules. This might give us a bit of a clue. It shows how people in different age groups are sticking to isolation rules. And if you look over here, a falling number of the over 35s are indeed doing that. In fact, only 75% did so in the first week in July. It's perhaps one of the best senses we have of how people are interpreting and responding to that health data, namely the fact that hospitalisations and deaths remain low.